Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm joined by Evan Gao, who's the founder of StoryOrigin. Now, StoryOrigin is a company that helps you do all of the types of marketing that are outside of the more traditional types of marketing. So we're looking at things like how you can grow your reader list by doing things like email swaps, by creating an amazing newsletter, by getting more reviews for your book, by reviewing the competition or building an author website. StoryOrigin is an amazing company. It does so many things, and it does all of the things that you need to be doing in the background of your business. So definitely check out StoryOrigin after the show. But in this episode, we're going to be going through how you can do those reader swaps, how you can build your newsletter list, and how you can get more fans by doing different types of marketing outside of things like advertising and direct sales. So it's a super interesting episode, and let me know what you think at the end. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. I'm here with Evan Gao, who's the founder and indie developer of StoryOrigin. So thank you very much for joining me, Evan.
Thanks for having me on.
So why don't you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to create StoryOrigin in the first place?
Yeah, so I used to write short stories back in high school and got interested in tech and entrepreneurship in college and worked for a few years, and then I wanted to get back into writing and then build tools for writers at the same time. So I went and I talked to a bunch of authors, and I heard, I use this service for building my mailing list, another service for finding reviewers, another service for creating universal book links, some combination of Facebook groups and Google Forms to arrange newsletter swaps, a different service for building my website, a different service, some combination of email and Google Docs for beta copies and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I see the problem here. Like, you've got 8 different services, 5 different spreadsheets. You're doing all this context switching between all these things and having to remember, okay, I want to do this today, so I need to go log into that. And then I'm going, and later okay, I'm going to build one thing that does it all. So StoryOrigin has a ton of tools for authors to do all those things we were talking about. So whether it's, building your mailing list, finding reviewers, building your website, working with beta readers, building, all of these different things that you need, all of that infrastructure you need as an author, StoryOrigin is there with you every step of the way.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I've heard so many good things about StoryOrigin and how it can help. So yeah, it's really exciting to have you on. The thing I wanted to talk to you mostly about today was newsletters, because I speak to a lot of people and a lot of authors, especially fiction authors, and they basically just use their newsletter as a bit of a way of just chatting to their audience. And it is, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but sometimes I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity. So I thought we could maybe talk about having a more important newsletter during today's show. So what do you think the main benefits of having a newsletter are for authors?
Yeah, I mean, a newsletter is fantastic because it is the only real way that you can have a direct point of contact with your audience. If you look across the sort of landscape of ways that authors can, draw in readers and all that stuff, you look at advertising platforms or you look at social media, all that stuff, it's not really, you're not building a personal relationship with your audience in the same way that a newsletter allows you to do. So when you send out that email, when you send out your newsletter, your audience is going to be a lot more likely to be open to responding and actually having a personal connection with you as an author. And those people that are on your mailing list are a lot more likely to become your champions. So they might be willing to join your review team, get an early copy of your next release and be ready to leave that review on day one. Or they might become beta readers for you, or they might be willing to join your review or your street team where they're just willing to release, post about your book's new release and all that stuff. And so really help you out as an author. And then the other thing is with that newsletter, you are in control of your own mailing list, right? So no one really controls email. It's this sort of decentralized system. And so if for whatever reason, your email service provider, if they, go out of business, you just take your email list that you've got and you can go over to a different email service provider, right? It's not like these other platforms as well, where like Facebook or Twitter or whatever can just ban your account and then, you are up the creek without a paddle, you own that sort of direct connection with your audience. And so that is extremely valuable to authors.
Yeah, I think a newsletter is one of the most important marketing things that any author can do. And from speaking to people on this podcast so much, it just seems to be like create your newsletter as soon as possible. There's no the best time to start is right now. You're missing out on loads of opportunities. And I think along with advertising, which can get you quite quick and direct results, newsletter is slightly more of a long game, but it's the way you can, as you say, build that relationship with customers and really get connection with them, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, advertising platforms, social media, all that stuff can play a role, certainly. And so they can be valuable in their own right, but that mailing list is really the only way that you have to have that direct connection with your readers.
Yeah, definitely. Now, one of the main things that is difficult for authors to get is getting those people to be on their mailing list in the first place. So what strategies do you really recommend for people to get those initial users and also then to grow that and get the further users later on?
Right. Yeah, exactly. The first question you kind of have to ask yourself is like, okay, so I started, I created a MailChimp account, or I created a MailerLite account, or whatever email service provider you want to use. I've created a list on it. Why would people want to join my mailing list, right?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
the first question you have to answer. And so what I recommend is you are an author and you are looking for readers to join your mailing list. Give them something that they want. Give them something to read for free when they sign up to your mailing list. And so for fiction authors, I generally recommend using a 10 to 20,000 word prequel short story to your book or your series. A prequel short story is just a great way to hook people into reading up the follow-up book or series. And so it just blends really seamlessly with doing that, upselling them into buying into the next book in the series. But it does not have to be a prequel short story. So usually I like to say these are recommendations, not roadblocks, right? Because like you said, starting an email list early is so important, and spending 6 months, because that's how long it's going to take you to write a prequel short story and get it edited and then find a book cover and do all that stuff. If that's going to take you that much time, it would be much better to find whatever you can take today and get started building your mailing list with that. So if you've already written and published book 1 in your series, take the first 3 chapters out of it. Use that sample as your reader magnet. And so give that away for free when people sign up to your mailing list. Yep. Or if you've got a bunch of short stories that you've just had laying around doing nothing for a long time and you've never published them, compile that into an anthology and give that anthology of short stories away to readers to sign up to your mailing list. And if you're a nonfiction author, you can do something like if you do something with like diet and exercise, you might have like a meal plan, or you might have worksheets for tracking things, something related to your book that may be like a sort of a companion to helping your readers fulfill whatever goal or put whatever knowledge is in your nonfiction book to work. And so, yeah, those are the different sorts of ideas that you might use as a fiction or nonfiction author to entice readers to sign up to your mailing list.
Yeah, I mean, nonfiction is a bit easier because obviously you're already teaching something you're usually teaching something, or you're giving away information. So the leader magnet can be further information, or it can be something to use like videos or a spreadsheet or a checklist to use with your nonfiction book. But I think fiction authors could maybe learn a bit from that, because, for example, with some of my books, they're about meditation and yoga and things like that. I give away some videos like explaining how to do some of the exercises, for example. But maybe if your book had some similar concepts, you could then give some similar videos away. It could be interviews with the author. It could be interviews about the book. And I think it could be a nice way to make your book stand out and get people onto your list as well.
I would always recommend for fiction authors, if you're giving something away, that it be something that is read. So I would actually make sure that, because one thing that you can have that will sometimes happen is you're targeting readers is ultimately what you want at the end of the day. And so I had a fiction author who he was a programmer, and he created a little like mini game that was sort of related to his book as well, and you'd get access to this little mini game. But at the same time, that is a sort of a different target audience than like readers of epic fantasy, right? And so always recommend make sure that whatever you're giving away matches the target audience that you have for your books as well. And the same thing applies even if what you're giving away is another book or whatever, right? So if you write steamy romance, make sure that if you are writing like a prequel short story to your steamy romance, that prequel short story is also a steamy romance, right? If you write a cozy romance novel or a cozy romance reader magnet, something or short story, and that's what you're giving away to entice people to sign up to your mailing list, and then they join your mailing list and they see a bunch of steamy stuff, or they buy into your series and they like are buying the follow-up, to your prequel, and it's a steamy book, you're setting up an expectation for your readers that you're going to miss if the prequel doesn't match what, book one is, right? And so that can lead to potentially like bad reviews because people are thinking they're going to get something that they're not getting, like they're expecting something different. And so, yeah, I would always recommend that try to just make sure that whatever you're using as your reader magnet or your lead magnet, whichever term you want to use, to draw people and entice people into joining your mailing list, that's going to match sort of your target audience with your books.
That's a really good point. I haven't thought about that, to be honest. It's really important to make sure you're keeping on the same category, and otherwise you'd set reader expectations that they would not get. And that's really important because those two examples you gave about cozy romance and steamy romance, those are quite different audiences.
Yes. And this is not something that I'm pulling out of thin air, like these are examples of things that I have seen authors do. And so I'm always just trying to make sure like we want to make sure that we can learn from other people's mistakes as well.
Yeah. I can just imagine grandparents' hats falling off when they if they got the steamy romance one rather than the cozy one.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah. Now, once this will definitely be different for fiction and non-fiction, but once you've got the subscribers, is there particular things you think the authors should focus on writing about? Let's start with fiction first, because it's going to be different for different people. For example, I spoke to Kevin J. Anderson. He's obviously a very prolific writer. In his newsletter, he just writes recipes and stuff he's been interested in, stuff he's doing. Now, I don't think that would necessarily work for people who don't have that reputation, because maybe if you're not famous, people aren't quite as interested in what hikes you've been on. But what sort of content would work, do you think, best for fiction? Let's start with fiction writers.
Well, so I would actually recommend basically the same thing for both fiction and nonfiction authors, and I break it down into your newsletter into sort of two pieces, which applies to anybody writing a newsletter. So there's one part of your newsletter where you are building rapport, and the other part of your newsletter is providing value. So the part where you're building rapport, this is just where you're trying to establish a relationship with your audience. It might just be like talking about you taking your dog for a walk, or taking your kid to the playground, or just something that, funny that happened to you recently. For example, I one time was, shopping for groceries online, and I saw a product image that was like a single bottle of soy sauce, right? And I was like, okay, I want 2 bottles of soy sauce. So I added 2 to the cart. And then what arrived was 12 bottles of soy sauce, because I didn't realize in the product description, it said, this is a pack of 6, even though the product image was a single. So it's like, so in my newsletter, I put, me standing there holding up 12 bottles of soy sauce and just telling this story, and put that in my newsletter. And that was like, several responses back from people like, I've done the exact same thing. And that it's just like, you're just trying to build, show that you're a human, like you have things that happen in your life. It doesn't always need to be funny or interesting stuff like that necessarily either. It can just, again, like it can just be like you taking your dog out for the or walk, or you like going to the park or something like that. It doesn't always need to be like super interesting. So it's just sharing a little bit about your life, and so that's how you're building a relationship with your audience. And so the second part is providing value to your audience, giving them a reason to keep opening and clicking on your emails. Because if all I ever did was send out pictures of me and my dog or whatever, and if that's all I sent out every single week or every single month or what, people would stop subscribing to my newsletter, because they're like, this is a very cute dog, Evan, but I'm looking for like advice about how to, make more money as an author or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so the providing value when you are an author is providing value to your readers. Usually I would recommend giving them other books that they might want to check out or read, right? So if you are an author of romance or sci-fi or fantasy or thriller, mystery, etc., give them other books that they might want to check out that they might be interested in. And so that's the second section of your newsletter, is other things that readers might enjoy, your audience might enjoy reading. These don't have to be books that you have personally read. I would not think about this section of your newsletter as a list of recommendations. I would think about it more like the also bought section on Amazon. So, when you're scrolling down the product page on Amazon, you'll see, readers that bought this also bought this. That's not Amazon saying, Jeff Bezos read this book and he is recommending these other books. He's read all these books and he's telling you these are the ones you're going to like, right? No, it's just Amazon saying like, hey, here's some other things that you might find interesting. We don't really know that, but here are things to check out. And so I recommend you having that second part of your newsletter be very similar to that. Just like, here's some other things that you might want to check out that you might be interested in. Because even if you really do love a book and you recommend it to everybody that you know, and you say, this is the best book I've ever read, there's still going to be people who are going to be like, yeah, I did not like that book. That was awful. And so I don't even worry too much about like, trying to recommend things to the audience, more just like, here are other things that might be interesting to you. And that's the thing that readers are always looking for, because you as an author, even if you're an insanely prolific author and you're writing, a book every 2 months or something like that, readers can read 50, 100, 200 books in a single year. Some readers, right? So readers can just be substantial. They can consume content much faster than you can write it as an author. And so for those newsletters, I recommend sending out a newsletter at least once a month. I've found that authors generally have actually higher open rates, higher click rates, etc., if they're sending out twice a month. So, regardless, though, you are not going to be having a new book to release every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, most likely. And so for those newsletters where you don't have a new release to talk about, you can have other books that you share and say, hey, these are other things that you might want to check out. And that's what provides the value to the readers, to have them keep opening and clicking on your emails, because they're always looking for, okay, what am I going to read next? Because I only have 50 pages left in my current book, and I want to find what's going to be my next read. So I'm going to open Evan's next email because I want to check out like, oh, what's some other, sci-fi or fantasy or romance or thriller books or whatever that I might want to check out for my next read.
Yeah. When you're suggesting those other books to read, is that generally, do you monetize that in any way? Or is it a case of just, here's something interesting you might look at?
Yeah, so that is a great question. Where do you find these other books that you are going to say, here's some things that you might want to check out? I generally recommend using that section to arrange cross promotions with other authors.
Yeah.
So I would say to another author who writes in my genre, hey, I'll agree to promote one of your books in one of my next newsletters if you agree to promote one of my books in one of your next newsletters. And arranging these cross promotions. So that particular type of a cross promotion, that's called a newsletter swap. It's a one-to-one cross promotion where I'm saying I'll mention your book in my newsletter if you mention my book in your newsletter. Then there is another type of cross promotion called a group promotion. And a group promotion is where you, me, and let's say 20 other, sci-fi or fantasy authors or romance authors or whatever, we all get together and we all list our books on a single landing page together. And then we all agree to promote that single landing page showing all of our books in our newsletters. And so we can all help each other out. That is another great type of cross promotion. And so when you have that section in your newsletter where you're saying, here's some other books to check out, those would be books that you've agreed to promote as a part of a newsletter swap or a group promotion that you've arranged with other authors. And StoryOrigin has a list of other authors, what dates they're sending out their newsletters, and there's lists of group promos for dates that those are running, and you can request newsletter swaps with other authors or request to join these group promos. And so that is where you would then find all of those books and group promotions to stick in your newsletter. And that, again, gives your readers a reason to keep opening and clicking on your emails.
Yeah. Does the newsletter swap service work a bit like a matchmaker as well to help you find people that are relevant to your niche?
It is not I wouldn't call it a matchmaker service so much as more of a directory. If you go on StoryOrigin and you go to the upcoming list of newsletter swaps available, essentially you will see a list that has, Evan is sending out his newsletter in 2 weeks. Teddy is sending out his newsletter in 3 weeks. And then you would have genre tags that say, Evan writes sci-fi and military and whatever. And then you'd have, Teddy writes romance and cozy and whatever. And so you can then filter down those lists of dates using tags on StoryOrigin to find exactly what you're looking for, other authors that are in your particular genre. And then you would just go to the date that they're sending out a newsletter and request a swap with them and say, hey, I'll promote my book. I'll promote your book in my newsletter on this date. You promote my book in your newsletter in 3 weeks from now or whatever. It's a very simple process. It takes all of about 30 seconds. It's just a form that you select from the drop downs and hit submit. It's like 3 fields.
That's amazing. Are there any ways of
Yeah.
making money from your newsletter as well? Like, obviously not just from selling your own books, but maybe through affiliate marketing or sponsorships or anything like that. Have you noticed that authors have started using any of those tactics in their newsletters?
Yeah, so you can certainly monetize your newsletter through other means. For nonfiction authors, where you build up an audience that is in that nonfiction realm, a lot of times you can make money from affiliates or from like sort of sponsorships and stuff like that. That's not something that you would. That's a little bit more of a complicated process because that's more about like building relationships and all that stuff. If you want to join an affiliate program like Amazon, you can also monetize, books via Amazon's affiliate tags that you just add to links. But I will say, Amazon's terms of service in their affiliate program do not allow you to add an affiliate tag within an email, because they do not allow any of what they call offline sort of affiliate traffic. So what you would do then is you would set up a page where, like the various retailers are listed. And so when a reader clicks on that link, it takes them to your website or wherever you set up this page. And then from that page is where you would then link to Amazon or whatever retailer, and then you would append your affiliate tag coming from that page. Now, this is actually incredibly simple to do on StoryOrigin using the universal book links feature. So the universal book links feature on StoryOrigin is exactly that. It's essentially a book cover and then the list of retailers for where that book is available for sale. So Amazon, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Apple, etc. And then you can add your affiliate tag to your Amazon link. And so when a reader clicks to go to the various retailers where it goes to that universal book link page, and if they then click Amazon, it would then take them to Amazon and automatically apply your affiliate tag. And so you can do the same thing when you're arranging newsletter swaps with other authors. If you're sending traffic to another author's universal book link on StoryOrigin via newsletter swap, you can apply your own affiliate tag. So when you're making those recommendations in your newsletter and you're driving traffic to those other authors' universal book links on StoryOrigin, you can have it so that if those readers like click on Amazon, your affiliate tag would be applied.
That's incredible. Now, when you're setting up those newsletters, do you have any tips for people for finding the right sort of partner to work with? Do you think it's just find other authors in your niche, or have you got a way of like finding the right newsletters that would work for you?
It's generally mostly just find other people that are in your genre. A lot of authors at the beginning, they sort of feel like, well, how can I do this? I have 0 people on my mailing list. Evan, we're talking about growing a mailing list, right? I have 0 people on my mailing list. How many people do I need on a mailing list before I can do a newsletter swap with another author or join a group promotion? And you can start with 0. So, I mean, you need to be planning to be sending out newsletters, but it's fine if your newsletter is only going to go to one person, right? Like you should at least have one person on your mailing list, which is your own email address, right? So you should have one. And you can go ahead and get started requesting newsletter swaps or joining group promos, even if you've only got, again, like one person on your mailing list, and that being yourself. And then just look for people that are in your genre. And a lot of authors are like trying to look for authors that have similar mailing list sizes as them, which I would say, like, don't necessarily hold back on requesting a newsletter swap with someone just because their list is like, let's say you've got a list of, 500 people and this other author has a list of 1,500 people. Like, I would not hold back from requesting a newsletter swap with that other author just because their list is 3 times bigger. Because a lot of authors, going back to what we were talking about earlier, where there are 2 parts of your newsletter, one where you're building a relationship, the second where you're providing value to your readers, those authors that have, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people on their mailing list, at the end of the day, the way they provide value to their readers is by promoting other books that their readers might be interested in. They do the exact same thing where they're like, I need a reason for my readers to open and click on my emails, and so I need other books that I can share with my readers. And so even if they've got 5,000 people on their mailing list, generally they'll be happy to promote other books from other authors that their audience might like, because that gets their readers to keep opening and clicking on their emails, even if they're not really getting anything else out of that cross promotion, right? So even if they're not really getting any traffic from you because your mailing list is really tiny or something, they will still be willing to accept a newsletter swap with you if they think that your book is going to be something that gets their readers excited, because that, again, like, just provides value to their audience. So I wouldn't ever, not every author has like that has the exact same thought processes around all this stuff. So I can't ever guarantee, like, if you request a newsletter swap with someone on StoryOrigin, they're always going to accept 100%. Yeah. Like, that's not how it works, right? Everyone is in control of their own newsletters. They're in their own driver's seat when it comes to what newsletter swaps or group promos they want to join or accept or request, etc. But that being said, generally the community is fairly open, and not only because it's self-interested, but like a lot of the community is also somewhat altruistic, where it's like, I started on StoryOrigin with 0 subscribers, and now I have 4,000 subscribers, and I did it by arranging newsletter swaps and by joining group promos through StoryOrigin. And it would be hypocritical of me to sort of have climbed this ladder and then to pulled it up after me. And so a lot of times those authors, even if they've got 4,000 people on their mailing list or whatever, they're usually willing to lend a hand to someone who is just starting out because someone else did that for them.
Yeah. And as you mentioned before, a lot of it is about relationships you make and building up those potentials for getting reviewer crews in, like advanced reviewer teams in future and things like that. So yeah, as long as you're sort of creating that partnership where you've got the same goals and the same match in mind, then maybe it could be a good thing to go for someone who's smaller but still very targeted to your target audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's if I'm a fantasy author with a list of 3,000 people or something, and I find a romance author with a list of 3,000 people, even though they've got the same list size as me, that doesn't necessarily make sense to do a newsletter swap because their audience is just not going to be interested in my book, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would recommend, sort of the main filter is just like, do they write books similar to you? Are they going to have an audience that is going to like what you write, and your audience is going to like what they write, etc. Yeah, but it's a lot easier to arrange newsletter swaps and to target the right audiences than it is to run like Facebook ads, and you have all this like this dashboard with this like, here's all these different ways that we're like targeting things, and here's our like bidding strategy and all this stuff. Like, this is why newsletter swaps and group promos and just cross promotion in general has taken off so much in the author community, is like, yeah, it's free, right? Like, when you and I agree to promote each other's books, we're not paying, no one's paying anyone, right? Like, we're not paying each other. It's easy, right? All I have to do is like take the link to your book and drop it into my newsletter, and then it's targeted, right? I know that if you're another sci-fi or fantasy author or whatever, then, and we write in the same genre, then I know your audience is going to like what I write. And so if I request a newsletter swap with you, and like, I know it's going to go to the right set of readers. And so that can be, that targeting can be quite challenging sometimes on advertising platforms, where you think like, oh, these people would like what I write because they're interested in these things. And it's like, oh no, these ads are getting very expensive because like very few of these people are actually interested in what I write. And so, yeah, it's, newsletter swaps and cross promotion in general is really taken off in the author community.
Yeah. On StoryOrigin, do you know what the average size of the newsletters are on there?
I could not give you, this is not something, I mean, I could, if I went into like my database and like did some queries and stuff, I could give you like some averages. So no, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's all over the place. I mean, there are people with, mailing lists of like 0 people or, 1 person when they're just getting started. And then there are people with mailing lists of like 12,000 people on StoryOrigin. So right. It really, it's across the spectrum.
So it's like ideal for beginners and also for people who have got like quite big lists who can like really get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can be at any stage, from debut author to bestseller. StoryOrigin sort of can grow with you up that path.
Yeah. So how does StoryOrigin actually help authors manage their newsletters and grow their lists and get their newsletters out to the subscribers?
Yeah, so you would still use an email service provider like MailerLite or something to design and send your newsletters. And then StoryOrigin you would use for creating the landing pages for your reader magnet or lead magnet or your cookie, whatever you want to call it, that free download that you're giving away when someone signs up to your mailing list. So you can set up that landing page for that free book or free short story on StoryOrigin. And then you can arrange cross promos, newsletter swaps, and group promos to drive traffic to that landing page you've built on StoryOrigin. And so that is how you would grow your mailing list with StoryOrigin, is set up that reader magnet and then arrange cross promotions for it. And
Right.
I
Okay.
know we're talking about newsletter growth part in particular, and so we're talking mostly about creating landing pages for reader magnets, but you can
Mhm.
also create landing pages like I mentioned earlier. You can create universal book links. That's where you are driving traffic to the retailers where your book is available for sale. You can create landing pages for your ebook review copies where you're trying to get more reviewers. You can set up landing pages for audiobook promo codes where readers can request a promo code and with the expectation they'd leave a review of that audiobook. And so if you're an author and you're just starting out, I would say the first thing you need to focus on is building that mailing list. But as your list grows over time, you can branch into, okay, well, now I want to get more reviews of my book, so I'm going to set up a review copy on StoryOrigin, and I'm going to arrange cross promotions to drive traffic to that my review copy landing page, etc. So
Yeah.
there's no you can basically have any goal with your cross promotions on StoryOrigin. So when you're arranging newsletter swaps or joining group promos, those cross promotions can be either to grow your mailing list, to build your review team, or to increase your sales. And so it's not only about necessarily building your mailing list, but if you are just getting started, that is where I would focus, is just on the building the mailing list part for a decent chunk of time.
Yeah. And if people are just starting out, do you recommend one of the particular email providers in particular, or do you think any of them can work?
I think I generally recommend MailerLite. It's got a
Yeah.
decently sized free tier, which is good for a lot of authors that are just starting out. So that's
I
what I
use
would
MailerLite. Yeah.
that's what I would say I would start with. There's lots of email service providers out there though. And StoryOrigin also integrates with 9 different email service providers. So when someone comes to your Reader Magnet landing page and requests that free ebook of your short story or whatever you're giving out when someone signs up to your mailing list, StoryOrigin will then take that contact info and automatically send it directly to your email service provider, whether that's MailerLite or MailChimp or ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit or whatever. And so their name and email address will automatically be added to your mailing list. But if you're using an email service provider that StoryOrigin doesn't integrate with, you can always download a CSV of the signups that you've gotten to your Reader Magnet on StoryOrigin, and then just upload those every once in a while. Upload that CSV to your email service provider. So yeah, you can use any email service provider in conjunction with StoryOrigin. It's just you don't have to use that integration piece with it.
Great. I mean, there's been some really good tips there. I think, the newsletter is the best place to make that connection with the authors. And I think StoryOrigin really helps you to start growing it and to, build the newsletters that are going to be really excellent. So I really like the stuff that it does. Have you got any advice for people who are literally just starting out? Like, how could they get the most out of StoryOrigin from the day one?
Yeah, so I would recommend, if you're looking for where to get started, just go to your StoryOrigin dashboard. There will be 3 text boxes on the homepage of your dashboard. One will say build your mailing list, the other will say find reviewers, and the third one will say increase sales. Just hit that build your mailing list one, and you will get a checklist that says go here, do this, go here, do this, go here, do this. And as you do those things, you'll get little check marks that say you've done them, right? That's like the fastest way to get set up. And then if you go to the tutorials tab on StoryOrigin, let's say you forget everything that I talked about today. That's totally fine. Just go to StoryOriginApp.com, hit the tutorials tab in the top of the nav bar, and you'll find there's in-depth guides and case studies from other authors and video tutorials. There's a whole bunch of resources there that will help you. Like if you're like, oh, what did Evan say? Like I should write for like my Reader Magnet thing. Oh, go to the 0 to 1,000, mailing lists, like in-depth guide, and you'll get advice there of like, go here, do this. I recommend writing like a prequel. Here's why, etc.
Yeah, it's literally step by step. Does it tell you exactly what to do? It's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. So if people want to get in touch, that's just storyorigin.com to
StoryOriginApp.com.
storyoriginapp.com. Great. And I'll just do that question again. So if people want to get in touch, just go to storyoriginapp.com storyoriginapp.com, and they can then see all the details for how to sign up and get all the things they need.
Yep, and if they just scroll to the bottom of the homepage on storyoriginapp.com, you will, at the end of just the homepage, you'll just see my face, my name, my email address. My inbox is always open to authors. I'm always super transparent about who I am, what I'm doing, all that stuff. Or if you hit the contact page on StoryOrigin, you'll also see my face, my name, my email address. So I'm very open with my inbox. So yeah, anyone is always welcome to reach out.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll put links to all that in the show notes. So if you want to just go and click on those, that'd be absolutely fine. Well, brilliant. Thank you, Evan. That's been really good overview of like exactly how to use newsletters. I learned a lot myself. So I hope the listeners, will get a lot from it too. So just one.
Thanks so much for having me on. Oh,
that's all right. That's all right. Well, thanks a lot, Evan. I really got a lot from that. I learned loads about doing newsletters, and I think the listeners to this will learn lots as well about StoryOrigin and also just starting themselves. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on.
That's been great. So it's just finally one final question just before we head off. What's one book that you recommend that everyone should be reading at the moment?
That's a good question. I love lit RPG. So if you are interested in if you really like character stats and like characters like growing and like becoming more powerful and stuff like that, I recommend He Who Fights with Monsters.
And who's that by?
That one is by Shirtaloon is like the pen name, and I think his actual name is Travis Deverell, but you might need to check me on that one.
Oh, cool. Well, we interviewed Dakota Kraut a few weeks ago, and his episode's coming up, so I'm sure you.
Oh, awesome! I've read his books as well.
Yeah, they're really big at the moment, and it's not something I know much about, so I'll have to do a bit more in-depth diving into it because people keep recommending these books. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I love them.
Great. Well, thanks, Evan. It's been great chatting to you, and speak soon. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively. And Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1. Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance podcast. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, let me tell you about Publishing Performance, the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales, but are not really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books. And if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximize your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalized ad account manager to create your ad campaigns, to choose your best keywords, and to make adjustments in real time. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure that your investment is being used effectively. And Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. Just go to publishingperformance.com to get started with Amazon ads for just $1.